Okay, we're just checking volume levels, making sure everything is looking good, and preparing things on the live stream. So bear with me for a few moments. On, save. I'm setting up a second machine to monitor the chat on the live stream while I'm flying. Or while I'm trying to operate the aircraft, should we say. Getting there slowly. Okay. Let's get this show on the road. So first thing we do in the 146 is go overhead and we turn the batteries to on. Excuse me. Then we go further overhead. We turn the nav light to high int, which is over here. No smoking to auto, which is here. And cabin emergency to armed, which is here. So you'll forgive me if I pause now and again. I haven't flown this aircraft for a few days. Well, before we go much further with configuring the aircraft, I need to configure the controllers. So the quadrant needs to be set up for a 4-engine aircraft. I've got a default profile for it. I wish this was a drop down and not a menu where you have to flick through all the profiles. They're not even in order. There we go. Apply, go back, resume. So we turn no smoking sign to auto, cabin emergency to armed, we've done that. And then yaw dampers, masters 1 and 2 to auto, autopilot master on, avionics A and B to on. Anti-skid and lift spoilers, anti-skid to on. Lift spoilers yellow and green to on. Then back overhead on the electric section, which is here, we turn the bus tie AC and DC to auto. So that's these two. Standby inverter and standby generator to armed. That's those done. And the APU generator to on. That's down here. So you have to click that twice to make that happen. I'm using a paper checklist, by the way. So I've written up the checklist. You can see in one of my other videos I do a beginner's guide to starting up the 146. Fuel in the first column, we have to turn the pumps left inner to on. That's here. APU on the third column, which is here. We turn the master switch to start. And then we wait for APU power to become available, so this needle will slowly scroll around. While we're waiting for that, we can go and arm the emergency lights. Just wait for APU to come up, and then once it comes up we can turn on the yaw dampers back on the central console. So just waiting for this. Okay, so APU is now available. So control and 4 takes us back down to the central console. We can turn on the yaw dampers. So back in the cockpit, we can go and enable the oxygen for the pilot and the co-pilot. Back on the overhead panel, if the keyboard responds, we can go to fuel and set center tank transfer to auto. So over on the fuel over here, the center tank transfer goes to auto. Ice protection to on. So here's the ice, or ice detection I should say, to on. Back down on the main panel, we have to click on the flip chart, which programs the rotate speeds. Turn the flight directors to on, so they are on each side of the glare shield. Nav 1 to on, so we zoom in and we need to press, I'm having a job pressing it, press the on button and then turn this to on. Back on the front pedestal, we turn the comm radios to on. And now we can go and set up our flight in the FMC. So just have a quick look through the views. Do we get a... No, we don't really get an an FMC specific view, do we? So we'll just arrange this one ourselves. So pos init. We are at EGKK. Okay, that's interesting. Clear the message. No flight plan. EGKK as our... I'm just going to double check that. We are at EGKK. We put that in as our key not active. Okay, this is being very, very odd. Go for flight plan. EGKK is working now. How strange. And we are flying to Dublin, which is EIDW. EIDW. Okay. We don't need to fill any of the rest of that in, but we can go now into departure and arrival. We are going to leave on 26 left from Gatwick, and we're going to use the NOV M1M standard instrument departure. So we go next page, NOV M1M, there it is, and we execute that, and we go to back to departure arrival. We go to arrivals into Dublin. We are going to use the ABLI 2X star and the ILS basically for runway 28 left. So we go next page to find ILS for 28 left, and then the ABLI 2X standard approach route, and we execute that. I'm just reading the live stream. Jep is saying, love the 146, though I had problems with the GPS yesterday. It would not follow the course in autopilot. Aussie Coffee Bean saying, good day. And Ms. Warrican, is that saying, good morning, we'll have to come back later. I need to focus on this properly. Okay, so then we go and look at the legs, and we can go to the next page, and we'll find a discontinuity between the SID and the star. So let's have a look at our flight plan. We've just got one waypoint in the middle, Brecon, which is BCN. We insert that in the discontinuity, and there are several Brecon. It's going to be the top one, which is in England, and then we can execute that change, and we have a complete flight plan. Let's just check that and go next and next. Yep, we've got no other problems in the flight plan. Okay, flight plan is done. So I'm just going to go and check what else is on the list here. Set up the MCP and the nav radios if we need to. So let's go and have another look at this MCP. We are taking off on runway 26, which is actually 257 degrees. So we're going to pre-configure our heading to be 257 degrees. So we need to see the heading marker over here. We're going to spin it round, ready for takeoff. So it's going to be about there, as far as I can tell. Okay, we need to also set our climb out altitude. We're going to fly to 18,000 feet for this trip. We're not going to go very high at all. And we're going to arm that. Otherwise the aircraft will climb straight through it if we're using the autopilot to climb out. What else do we need to think about? Before we arm the autopilot, we can switch on some things. So we can go for... just thinking, LNAV mode. Will it let us do that yet? We can certainly go for heading mode immediately. Obviously, as soon as we get the aircraft running, we can switch over to LNAV. We won't go for vertical speed mode either. We'll do that after we take off because of the way the autopilot works on this aircraft. Okay, so we've done the basics of the flight plan. We don't need to worry about the nav radios because we've got the flight management computer programmed. So back overhead. We're going to put the fasten seatbelt sign on, which is here. Telling the passengers to get in their seats and do as they're told. Back overhead, lights and notices. We're going to turn the beacon light to on, which is basically informing people on the ground that we're about to start the engines. So we can do pushback at this point if we wanted to, which we will do today. So we will need to go and remove the chocks, which we can do in here. Okay. And I'm going to cheat a little bit with the pushback. So we're going to remove the parking brake here and press Shift and P, which should push us back. Oh, we're going to get the tug is going to push us back. Okay, that's fine. We're just going back in a straight line to the area behind us, just to give us enough room, because we're going to turn off down here to get to the runway in a few minutes. So this is 26 right, and the other one is left, I think. Is it 26 or 27? 26. So we'll start to get the pushback in a moment. Announcements.
Cabin crew, please take your seats for takeoff.
Okay, so while pushback is happening, we can go up to overhead and we can go and turn on all the fuel pumps now.
Cabin.
That was the cabin telling the pilot that everybody's sitting down now. We're just going to watch this briefly. If we had a planned pushback, we could get on with doing the engines, but we're not going to. We're going to keep an eye on this. So we'll be a little bit late. So Ernie Module saying hi all. Oh, there comes a plane coming in on the runway we'll be leaving on in a moment. Actually, no, he's on the runways. On the right runway, isn't he? Anyway, so press Shift and P again. Parking brake back on. So we put the fuel pumps on already. So in the engine column, which is here, we turn the start master to on. We select each engine in turn and press the start and wait for it to spool up. So we go for number 4 and we press start. All the lights come on, and if we look down in the lower part of the cabin, you will see the numbers coming up for engine number 4. When this gets to 20, we will flick the switch for number 4 for the fuel, which is on the lever. So there we go. And then we just wait for it to come up. So you can actually see that happen up here. These lights will go out, and that means we can then move on to the next engine. So we just sit and wait patiently for it. You have to do this 4 times. This is the only real bugbear with this aircraft, is it takes a while to get the engines running. Because it uses electric starters, it doesn't use compressed air like lots of other aircraft. So you can see engine number 2 is coming up, so we're waiting for 20 to appear on the... That's the N1 gauges, isn't it? Yeah, the N1 gauge, which is the turbofan. There goes 20, and there we go. That's climbing. So again, we wait for the lights to go out, meaning that, you know, the ignition sequence is finished. Looks like a gloomy day in Gatwick. Yes, it's live weather, and it is a gloomy day outside. I only live about half an hour, or 3/4 of an hour maybe, from Gatwick. Engine start for engine number 2. So again, we're waiting for the N1 to come up to 20, and then we will introduce fuel on engine number 2. And the mouse has disappeared. There we go. So we're just waiting for the lights to go out for a final time, and then we go to engine number 1. Just thinking, I'm not sure if I have changed the volume mixer. Oh yeah, it is on 100%, that's good. Okay, engine number 1, so we can turn this back round to number 1 and start number 1. So we're waiting for the numbers to come up for the final time. Give it a chance. And fuel is introduced and the engine spins up. When the lights go out, we turn the selector to 0, or to off I should say, and the master start switch to off. Just give it a chance. There we go. So selector goes to off, master start switch to off. Okay, so let's go back to control 7. Electric in the second column. Generators number 1 to on and number 4 to on. Packs on the far right, pack 1 and 2 to on. Engine air all to on. Overhead rear, control and 8. Top left, brake fans to auto. So that's here. Hydraulics, engine 2 pump to on, engine 3 pump to on. It's here. Okay, we are nearly ready to go. Ice protection, all heaters to on. So these are here. And we are basically ready for taxi now. This is interesting. I'm just going to set that into the middle. Okay. So, flaps go, ready for takeoff. We check our lights. So what lights do we have on? It's up above, isn't it? Right at the top corner. So strobes don't go to on until we're on the runway. The beacon's on, nav lights are on. Okay, we're looking good. So we are not using ATC or anything like that today. Okay, so Jeep is saying there is an update for the 146 this week, and it will have a number of improvements. That will be good. So we'll just go and check the map to see where we're going. So second left, and that's 26 left, okay. So not this one, the next left. There appears to be an aircraft in our way. Is he going to move? Or are we going to move him? Or go through him? Or maybe he's waiting for the A380 that's just coming in. Okay, I'm going to take it that that's an AI aeroplane, so I'm going to go straight through it. We're going to ignore it. Sorry, Mr. Artificially Intelligent light plane that shouldn't be operating out of Gatwick. Okay. Let's turn on the TMS system. Is it going to work? There it goes. We just ask it to sync things for us for the moment. Speed come up. Okay, gear up. Flaps up. Allowing down now. We'll hold vertical speed, at least for the moment. We'll go for maximum continuous thrust on the engines, which will probably derate them somewhat. Okay, why is LNAV not working? Let's have a look at the flight plan quickly. Working. It's not. Okay, we are going to default to using VORs instead then, which is fine. So 114.00 is our first VOR. So 114.00. Okay, it's live. So let's find out what direction it is. Okay, we go to VOR lock mode. The aircraft will steer left towards it. We're going to reduce our climb so we can accelerate. So I'm just trimming the aircraft down to about 7.5. We can look at the vertical speed here. About 1,500 feet a minute will be fine. Okay, so we'll go and hit the vertical speed now. And you can see the aircraft's now accelerating out towards 250 knots. We will moderate our throttles. Accordingly, or we could use the vertical speed to manage our indicated airspeed. So we're coming up to 250 knots. So let's just trim up a bit to maybe 10-degree climb. So we're using the pitch to control indicated airspeed. We don't really want to go much faster than 250 below 10,000 feet. So we're coming up through. I forgot to calibrate the altimeter when we took off. We've just done it. Just coming up through 7,500 feet. I need to put that on the checklist. I always forget that. So we can see we've got 6 miles to go until we get to the VOR. So where will our next VOR be? It is Brecon, 11745. Should we go and see if we can get it already? 11745. nothing yet, so we'll fly at least the heading towards Brecon, which would be 296 degrees. So we'll get ready on heading mode. 3 miles to go. Okay, we're going to turn to 296, 280, 290. So if we do 290, then we can pick it up when we get a bit closer. Let's keep an eye on the airspeed. We're creeping up above. Oh, it's okay now though because we are above 10,000 feet. So we should be gaining range of Brecon. Is this alive yet? Let's go and turn the course to nav2. As soon as we get DME, that's a good point actually. Let's go and look at the range for the Brecon. So if we go and show information for Brecon, range should be 195 miles. It's interesting that let's just check that. Well, yeah, we can see there. We're only about 105 miles away. Have a look. 11745, is that correct? 11745. Let's try it on nav 1. So we're on heading mode, so this won't make any difference to it. 11745. And we've got it this time. Interesting. So if we turn the course to more or less the direction we're going. Okay, so we can go back to VOR lock mode and that will fly the heading into the VOR beacon for us. So we're coming up towards 18,000 feet, so we need to be careful on the engine mode. So we'll go back to sync. Coming up. And levelling out. Slowly. So 96 miles to go until we get to Brecon. So let's just pull the engines back to cruise. So we're basically watching the indicated airspeed now to make sure we don't accelerate any further. It'll creep up towards 300 slowly. Should we have a look outside? Some pretty serious weather systems around, aren't there? We didn't turn the strobes on, did we? Let's go do that. That's better. Hopefully the weather in Ireland isn't going to be quite as severe. Should we get rid of the tablet out of the way? So we can see out the window then. Pretty awful weather around, isn't there? So hopefully the landing's going to be okay at Dublin. Can't see why it won't be. Okay, we're getting near to overspeed, so I'm going to pull the engines back to about 85, maybe 87%. Let's just see what happens with the indicated airspeed. Okay, let's have a look at the map. That's interesting. So I wonder why it's not picking up the flight plan. Index. Progress. So it knows it's going towards Brecon. Let's go see if it will understand LNAV again. No, it's not having it, is it? That's a bit odd. Haven't many discontinuities, have they? No. How very strange. Ah, good point. Somebody just said this is on nav, so that should have worked. There we go. Oh, nav, yes, of course. Just shows how rusty I am with flying the 146. But again, it made a bit of a change, didn't it, to fly the VORs? I'm so rusty because I've been busy flying the Airbus and the 737. It's amazing how quickly you forget. So what it will be doing now is it's just doing an intercept course to rejoin the original flight plan, which is fine. So it'll turn right again in a moment. There we go. I mean, flying the VORs was fine as well, but didn't make much difference to us. But it's nice to see it follow the plan. Adam says, hello Captain Jonathan, I know you're not flying it, but I finally bought and tried out the 737. Wow, it's such a great aircraft. Thanks for all the tips and tricks. Yeah, it's good fun, isn't it? Okay, so this is now rejoining the flight plan. So now we have correctly switched this little yellow switch over to RNAV, which really means FMS or flight, the program flight plan. The course deviation indicator now reflects the flight plan, not the VOR that's tuned in. So this is our course relative to this program flight plan. So you can see as soon as we switched it on, the aircraft realigned itself. We were in the ballpark anyway because we just reverted to using VOR navigation. But yeah, totally down to me using too many aeroplanes one after another and becoming rusty on some of them. The weather is looking, interesting. Torsten has said, Airbus or 737, which do you prefer? I don't know. I like them both. They're different in that the Airbus relies on a lot of preparation work. But then while you're flying it, you really have little to do. Whereas the 737, there's not as much prep work. But you get a lot more to do during the flight. So the balance is just different on the workload. So you don't really fly the Airbus. You program the computer to fly it for you. I guess that's where the difference is. Whereas with the Boeing, it's much more like you're actually flying it. Although, you're configuring systems to fly it for you, but yeah. But I like them both. They're different philosophies. I will admit I'm more at home in the Boeing, but that's just because of practice. There are people that have flown the Airbus to death, because they came up through the fly-by-wire or the Tollis or other ones that, from X-Plane. or even in P3D had the Flight Sim Labs Airbus, which was supposedly very, very good until they tried to infect people's computers with malware. But there you go. We're not going to get into that story today. Suffice to say that Milvius tried the same trick until the entire community went nuts at them and they removed their DRM software. I think it's the most interesting story that has come out is Phoenix doing the A320 and selling it for £50. So they've kind of flown in the face of people like PMDG or Leonardo and said, no, this market is big enough with Flight Simulator that we can sell an aeroplane at half the price you would have done 10 years ago. If it's not Boeing, I'm not going. I'm guessing that's what most Americans say because they're quite patriotic about their airline. Forget that Boeing, half the electronics come from semiconductor companies halfway around the world, or lots of the measuring equipment on the aircraft comes from international partners all over the world. It's quite amusing. There's quite a good story, isn't there, about the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35, that the program, although it went over budget, is essentially too big and too expensive to cancel because it would involve cancelling thousands of contracts. Similar thing happened years ago with the F-111. Really, it should never have gone into service in the first place. It lost the competition, but politically there was an awful lot of arm twisting to get it put into production. Yeah, I still think the 146 should have been cheaper than it was. That's just me. Considering they didn't write a flight management computer, they lifted the working title one. Yes, it's very nice in that the modelling's very nice, and who knows if the flight model's accurate. There are bugs. The fuel usage is massively off. You can fly something like 4,000 miles in it, which you shouldn't be able to do. I think the Phoenix Airbus has raised the bar enormously, but I'm guessing Phoenix have taken an enormous risk in terms of the development cost. They probably sunk $500,000 into developing that plane. Okay, so let's see where we are. Just coming up on Brecon, and then we fly across the Irish Sea towards Dublin. Let's go and put the camera up in the corner of the cockpit for a few minutes. And I'm going to go make a coffee in a minute. Jeep is just saying fuel use is apparently fixed in 1.3. Good. I didn't actually test it myself, as some friends of mine had done a long flight in it and said, yeah, you can fly halfway around the world in it. Okay, we have a ice protected, yeah, so it's pretty cold up here. So we're going to go to ice protection. That's already on. We're going to turn on the wing and the tail anti-ice, which will impact our thrust level and the minimum amount of thrust or minimum speed of engines to generate the electricity to drive the anti-thrust system. I'm just edging the engines forwards to about 80% and thereabouts. in cold air in the cloud. The outside air temperature is on the gauge over here. So you can see, yeah, it's minus 15. Obviously, which isn't a problem unless you're in cloud. So then you get ice forming, so we've switched everything on. Where are we flying over at the moment? Okay, we've just flown over the River Severn, the Bristol Channel, as it goes further past Bristol. Now over Newport and into Wales. Over the Brecon Beacons. Not that we can see them, because if you see anything out the other side, a little bit better. Okay, the ice warning has gone away, but I'm going to turn things off for the moment. Until we go into this cloud up ahead, and I'll turn it back on again. Hoping this isn't going to be the story at Dublin, otherwise we might have a fun approach. About to change direction. So you should see the aircraft turn right in a moment. We're coming up 9 miles to the Brecon waypoint. Don't think we get the progress page on here, do we? We need to press index. Do we get progress? Oh, we do. Okay. So about 28 minutes until we get to Dublin. Good. So we'll look outside. It's a noisy sound, so they. Okay, so you can see the distance measuring equipment. It's actually measuring the VOR, whereas this is measuring the waypoint. So are we going to get an ice detect very soon? There we go, there's the turn from Brecon towards across the Irish Sea over Dublin, towards Dublin I should say. So we've got 89 miles to run. Quick question, the central windshield has a thing on it with a couple of spears. Looks like it has a purpose. Yes, I know exactly what it is. You'll notice when you sit in the normal position they line up. It is an orientation marker for the pilots to adjust their seats. So in order for the pilot's head to be in the correct position to, for their orientation of seeing outside the cockpit correctly, they use these markers. Okay, that's what it's for. So when the pilots get in and they adjust their seats, they might raise or lower their seat until one ball disappears behind the other, or they might slide the seat backwards or forwards until one ball disappears behind the other. If it isn't, so if I was to sit forward in my seat, I wouldn't be in the right place. Okay, that's all it's for. It's very common, lots of aircraft have it. How are we doing? Have we got ice detected again yet? Yes, we have. So the ice the anti-ice stuff is going to go back on. Should keep us nice and safe. Temperature outside is nearly -20 now. Great. Miles to run. Let's have a look at the map, see where we are. So we can see there are some restrictions on the way in. So at Ablin we need to be between 15 and 18,000 feet, so we will start descending just before Ablin to get down to 16,000. Then at Urkham we have to be above 9,000. Let's turn off the centering on this. 7,000 feet for Peacock. And then between Sivna and Lapmo, we need to get down to just above 3,000 feet from 7,000. So it's not too steep a descent, but we need to, be quite careful about doing that. And we've got some speed restrictions as well there. Look, so below 180 knots when we get to Lapmo, below 230 at Sivna, below 240 at Lipgo. So it shouldn't be too difficult. Let's just leave that there. So Ernie is saying you learn something new every day. Yeah, I wondered about those for a long time, and it was an actual real world pilot that told me what they were for. I'm not sure without a head-up display why it's important on an aircraft such as this one for your head to be in the right place. Presumably it's just to get the correct amount of vision over the front of the aircraft, and maybe as a backup to various things there are measurements that can be made that are meaningful as long as your head is in the right place in the cockpit. I guess you get to see the this instrument over the top of the yoke if you're high enough. If you were too low in the cockpit you wouldn't see that. Okay, 60 miles to run until we get to the next waypoint. So there we go, we've appeared on the map. Zooming across to Ablin. So when we get a bit closer to it, we'll descend down to 16,000 feet. What does that say? Okay, so ice detection has switched off. Oh no, it's saying ice detected again. So we'll turn it all back on again. The runway lights, so the PAPI lights you're on about, that gauge your, well, sitting up or down in the seat isn't going to make a huge difference to that, other than the aircraft being higher or lower by 6 inches. I guess, yeah, you could say it's going to be that, yeah, it could make a difference those few inches on descent, but again, it's a question to ask a real world pilot about if your head position in most aircraft is really that important. So Ronnie is saying it looks like a fun plane to fly. It's interesting. I think one of the most interesting things is this system here, TMS system, the thrust modulation system. We've got it in sync mode at the moment, and we've got it set to N1 and master 1. What that basically means is if I move one of the throttles, the other throttles will equal it. So I'm not going to do it now, but it also has some weird programs. So it hasn't got an auto throttle, but it's got this kind of a system. So you can have max continuous thrust, you can have target thrust. It's interesting. So it's thrust temperature, sorry, TTT. There's a descent mode. We're not going to use that. We're just going to leave it on sync mode to descend. What sync mode means is where the engines would have the natural variance between each other. So the same amount of throttle might give out a different amount of engine speed. Sync basically makes all of the engines copy one of them, so that you can see they're within 0.1% of each other. Otherwise they wouldn't be. So, and it's just come through with the Dublin weather forecast for us, which is really useful. Thank you. So yeah, the wind is coming basically from just slight crosswind into the runway. But we should be good. We'll have ILS, so let's go and get that programmed in before we get there. 111.35, 277 degrees. So 111.35 and 277 degrees. Okay, so when we switch back over to nav mode after we get closer on approach, we'll be able to pick up the glide slope hopefully. Okay, 30 miles to go. Just refresh our memory. So we're at 18,000 feet. So we'll drop down to 16,000 for Abilene. So we can start doing that now. We can set that as a target. And notice vertical speed came off as soon as we did that. So we can use the trim now to push the nose down gently. And we'll see the vertical speed changing over here. So we'll get it down to 500 feet a minute. And then hit the vertical speed button, and that will maintain that until we get to the target altitude. So you can see the altitude is coming off very slowly. Obviously we're going to accelerate, so we need to keep an eye on the throttles. So we're just going to ease them back. Peter Scout. Scarab is saying the 146 is my absolute favourite. PP saying I miss flying this since the 737 came out. Yeah, trouble is I've become really rusty. I'd forgotten all about the switch that switches between the flight management computer and the VOR radios. It's just purely because I've been flying other aircraft too much. We've been pelted with rain outside, by the way. Absolutely pelted. So we're slowly descending. Miles to go to our turning point. Well, it's not really a turning point, but next planning point. So we'll drop to 10,000 feet for Irkham. Then we need to decelerate for Lipgo to below 240 knots. So that klaxon we just heard is telling us we are within 900 feet of our target altitude. Pretty much doing this by the numbers. You can see actually we are accelerating, even though we ran the throttle back quite considerably. I'm going to wind it back a bit more. What's the outside air temperature like? Still about minus 17 out there. Still quite a lot of cloud around. Oh, it's clearing up though. Having said that. Okay, we're getting there slowly. Okay, so we're coming up to 16,000 feet, so obviously the plane is going to level itself back out, so the speed will begin to drop again because we reduce thrust. But that's fine because we're about to descend again. So we'll start getting ready to descend to 10,000. So we take this down to 10. And we will wait a few moments before we do it. Peter Scarab saying, yeah, it does a number on you. Well, I had that on climb out. I was thinking to myself, why won't LNAV work? And I'd completely forgotten to switch over. Okay, so let's set that target altitude. Let's start descending. We're 4 miles from the descent point anyway. So let's get the nose going down. We'll go for 1,000 feet a minute this time. Vertical speed on. Okay, and wind the engines back because we're going to accelerate. So on the TMS system, if you engage descent mode, it will basically give you a minimum amount of thrust to still support whatever electrical draw you require. So if you're using all the anti-ice, as we were, or we are, if I go and turn it off now, let's see if it's happy having it switched off, or if it's going to say ice detected. No, it's fine. So I think it's about 60% is minimum idle, typically on descent mode. If you start switching on anti-ice, it's about 67% is required to still generate enough electricity from the jet engines to support the anti-ice current requirements. We're just getting faster, aren't we? Let's pull the throttles back even further. So we are going to need to decelerate soon anyway. So we're going to need to come down steeper than this. So we'll turn vertical speed off. We're going to push the nose down further to 2,000 feet a minute. And pull the throttles to idle. We might need air brakes. So just edge the air brakes open to get us away from overspeeding. Yeah, still accelerating. 10 miles to go until we need to be at our target altitude, so we'll keep going. The rumbling you can hear is just the noise from the tail opening up for the air brake. 8 miles to go, coming down quite quickly. Now 11,000 feet. Come off the air brake. Okay, so the next target is to get down below 240 knots at lip go, and then 7,000 feet for peacock. So we'll go for 7,000 feet, so we'll continue on down, set that as our target, and we're going to start removing that speed. Zoom in and have a look on the map about where the feathers begin. So the feathers begin after lap mode, which is fine. We can zoom in a bit now, can't we? See this in a bit more detail. How are we doing on the speed? Speed is slowly coming off, that's fine. Obviously we're going to level out as well when we get to 7,000 feet. We're just going to put the brakes out a bit stronger. So we're within 900 feet of our target altitude again. Down towards 7,000, which is, we're doing it quite smartly, which is good. They actually want us at below 230 knots, so we'll let the speed bleed off as we level out. So we'll start winding the engines back up. We're down to 230 already, look. Okay, so Civna is still 7,000. As soon as we get through Civna, we go for 3,000, just above 3,000 feet for lap mode. So we'll go for 3.5. So notice that lap mode also wants us below 180 knots, so we will have to have flaps out to achieve that. So we're already at the target airspeed and altitude for Sivna, so we've just got a few moments to cross the 5 miles towards it. You see that on the progress screen. Sivna is, let's get the yoke out of the way so we can see what we're doing. I need to get rid of the yoke on this. Is it the lever? Yeah, it is. Obviously now we can see the progress screen easily. So Sivna, then Lapmo. Obviously if you want to see the restrictions you can go look at the flight plan page, sorry, the legs page, and you will see the restrictions along the way. But interestingly it doesn't show you the speed restrictions on there. That's where you should have a chart, I guess. So if we go to index and progress, you can see that. Okay, so we're going to drop down to 3,500 feet now. If I can dial it in. Dial it in. And the vertical speed, so it's switched off at the moment. Remember, as soon as we hit the arm on the altitude, vertical speed switches off, so we can just use trim to push the aircraft into a descent rate that we want. So we'll go for 1,000 feet a minute and see how that does. And hit vertical speed to maintain that. Then as soon as we make that turn at Lapmo, we will switch over to using the ILS. And I will land it instead of the aircraft. I'll take over. So we're needing to get the speed down as well on the way down. So let's start doing that. Probably not descending fast enough, are we? Yeah, we're going to have to expedite our descent slightly. So we're down to 230 knots. We need to be at 180 by the time we make the corner. If we can get down to our target height quickly, then we level out. I think we'll be fine. As soon as we get underneath 200 knots, I'll start extending the flaps anyway. Miles to go until our target. Yeah, we'll start levelling out in a moment, and then yeah, here we go. Aircraft's levelling out. The speed will drop off. Got plenty of time. Okay, so the speed has come off. Let's get the flaps down and increase the thrust. 6 miles to go until the turning point. Let's get the landing lights on. Gear down now. I have a lot of drag now. Okay, so if we look at the map, so we're below our target airspeed that we needed to be. We've got the flaps down, we've got the engine stabilised to hold the speed, we've got the gear down, lights on, we're looking good. So the aircraft is starting to turn left. We could switch over now. How far are we away? Yeah, so let's switch over now and turn the autopilot off, which I do with the button, that's fine. The flight directors are fine. We can leave those on. So we're pretty much lined up on the glide slope, just turning to the runway. Start descending. Careful full flaps. It's amazing how much lift they give you. Let's straighten our view up a little bit so we can just concentrate easily on what's going on.
2500.
Five miles to run, a little bit low, just lifting the nose to correct that. Should see an airfield in front of us any moment. It's slightly off to the right. And there's the runway. some turbulence. Interesting.
Glide slope.
Yeah, I'm a bit low. I know. Just correcting that.
Fifty, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Okay, so just throwing out the spoilers. They're massive spoilers on this thing, aren't they? Okay, spoilers back in. Flaps up. Taxi in. Pretty uneventful, really. Yeah, it was a bit gusty. Yeah, that's probably the best word for it. So I lost a fair amount of lift, about 3 or 4 miles out. I guess the wind just changed direction. Find somewhere to park. Okay, that was a fun way to spend lunchtime. We're not supposed to enter from this side, are we? There's a great big X there. So I'll go around the other side. Should go and turn the landing lights off. Turn the strobes off as well, but I'm not going to try and do it while I'm steering the aircraft. So I'll just, unfortunately we're going to blind people probably, but oh well. This is why you have a co-pilot, to throw all the switches for you. Since we come over next to this. An Airbus. Parking brakes on. We left the APU on, didn't we? So yeah. So it's one of the odd things that you can leave the APU on all the time in the 146. You don't have to switch it off. So because we have the APU, we can go and kill the engines, and it won't hurt it. But then we can go overhead and go and turn the strobes off, beacons off, nav lights to off. And obviously, you know, you can reverse your path around the cockpit to do all that. Unfortunately, my lunchtime has run out. So here I am. Oh. Okay, I'm going to go and grab a quick sandwich and then I've got to get on with my work. So I'll speak to you all later. Okay, thanks for watching if you're following along. And I'll see you all soon. Take care. I'm going to stop the stream there.